Welcome to The Real World. My name is Cameron. Thank you so much for joining us here on episode 95 of The Real World podcast. We're talking all about our favorite actors turned directors. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. We are huge movie fanatics, and if you are the same, you are in the right place. We are over 500 subscribers, on our way to 1,000. Very excited about that. Make sure you share this on social media with your friends. Make sure you follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We're also on Letterboxd, so you can check us out there. This episode, we're talking all about our favorite actors turned directors. But first, let's kick things off as we usually do with some movie news. Ethan Hawke has been cast in The Last of the Tribe. This is said to be a jungle thriller set in the rainforests of the Amazon. Very curious about this. That logline has me interested, and I'm a big fan of Ethan Hawke as well. So I'm very curious to see what this film ends up being. A Tomb Raider series is now in development over at Amazon Prime. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is set to write the series. It is said to be shooting soon with a hopeful release date for late next year. Will Ferrell will star in his first ever scripted comedy series on Netflix titled Golf. The show follows a fictional golf legend in a 10-episode run. So very curious to see what Mr. Ferrell ends up doing with that show. The first trailer for Dune Prophecy arrived online this week. It is set 10,000 years before the birth of Paul Atreides, who of course is the protagonist of the Dune films, part 2 of which was just released on 4K. Keanu Reeves joins The Entertainment System is Down. Kirsten Dunst and Daniel Bruhl will also be in this film. The director purchased a Boeing 747 for the film. This sounds like something big in the works. Donnie Yen's character Kane from John Wick Chapter 4 is getting his own spin-off film. It was set up at the end of that movie, so I'm very excited to see what exactly happens in that next chapter of the John Wick franchise. Jake Gyllenhaal will return in Roadhouse 2. His recent Roadhouse remake for Amazon Prime was the most watched movie in the history of their streaming service, so of course it's getting a sequel. Jonathan Bailey will star in the next Jurassic movie. We don't have a title for this film yet, but this actor will play the lead role in the film. Nicolas Cage has been cast in Spider-Man Noir, the series, a live-action series coming to Amazon Prime very soon. This is, of course, the role that he played in the Spider-Verse films, and now he'll be playing the role in live action. This is by far my most anticipated Spider project to date. Several films set release dates as well as a couple of series. Over at DC, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is set for release on June 26, 2026. Craig Gillespie will direct. Millie Alcock will star. The film is said to be based on the comic book that shares its title. Very highly anticipating that. One of my favorite comics of recent years. Daredevil Born Again hits Disney Plus in March of 2025. This show has gone through several reshoots. It's been totally revamped. Now it will release in 2025 in the month of March on Disney Plus. Ironheart gets her own series, which will also debut in late 2025. 2 new Marvel shows in development. Very excited about both. Mortal Kombat 2, the sequel to the recent Mortal Kombat live action film, is going to be released on October 24th, 2025. I'm a huge fan of that first movie, so I'm really excited to see where they go with the sequel. All right, folks, well, that is it for movie news. Now it's time to jump into our main topic, which is actors turned directors. There are several individuals throughout the history of Hollywood who have done this. And so we wanted to talk about some of our favorites because If is in theaters right now. John Krasinski is the director of that. He, of course, started off as an actor on TV series like The Office, where he got very popular and now has become a big Hollywood director. So I thought this was a fun topic, and this is going to be a fun discussion. So joining me on this episode is Bert. How you doing, man?
Hello, Cam. How's it going?
Doing very well, very well. Wanted to discuss, actors turned directors briefly before we get into our list. We each have a top 10. We have not shared these lists ahead of time, so I have no idea what's on his list. He doesn't know what's on my list. although I think I have a sneaking suspicion one person who might be on your list.
No
Um,
clues at all.
no clues. But yeah, so I don't have a ton to say about this. Of course, in Hollywood, a lot of people get into the film business to be the big star of the big movie. I feel like that's kind of a lot of people want to be famous or they want to act. I think fewer people want to be directors. But I think a lot of actors, once they get into Hollywood and they see kind of how movies work, they realize that the director's the boss. He's the one in charge. And maybe they want to, exert a little bit of that creativity themselves on set. And so I
Or
think
want more of a
that's
challenge.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely more of a challenge. But I think, some actors are kind of just there for the accolades and the paycheck, and some are
Yeah.
there to tell a story. Some are real
Yeah.
storytellers. They want to, tell a story. And so they end up becoming directors themselves. So all these picks again are actors, people who started off as actors and then eventually became directors. So it's a fun list to put together. I in my list somewhat leaded I guess I was leaning a little maybe towards the directorial efforts than the acting credits necessarily, but I
Mm.
wanted there to be a balance. So the way I have them ranked, you'll kind of see, some of the ones that are lower ranked maybe don't have as many acting credits as they do directing credits, or vice
Hmm.
versa. And so that's kind of how I went about making my list. Bert, what were your thoughts kind of going into this, making this list for this podcast?
I definitely try to pick people that impress me in both. In other words, not just someone that had tons of acting and movies that I loved, but just happened to direct a couple films that I've never seen or something like that. I tried to strike a pretty good balance. Um, and I also I took a look at their number of credits because that it's not the only factor for sure, and my list will be evident uh, based on that. But it is interesting to look at how many, because if you've got a lot of a great thing, that can add to your resume and make you better. But I think the key is that, like most of our lists, this isn't necessarily the best ones, subjectively or objectively. It's just which ones are our top ones. So it's really more. I guess I should say it is subjective to us.
Right.
Uh, and so it's which ones are our top ones, which ones do we like the most.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. Great way to break it down. All right, I think we're ready to jump in. I do have two honorable mentions. I don't know, do you have any honorable mentions?
No,
Okay.
no.
I just wanted to bring up these two briefly because they both were guys that I wanted to include. They just didn't quite make the cut. The first is Rob Reiner, who's a director I
Mm,
like a lot. He's
yeah,
had
yeah.
he's had some good acting credits too, just not a ton. But as a director, I mean, this guy's done some great movies from Spinal Tap, one of my favorite
Right.
mockumentaries, to Stand By Me, which I think is fantastic.
Mm.
Princess Bride, one of my
Oh yeah.
favorites we watch all the time, and A Few Good Men. So a good mix of different
Yes.
types of movies
Hmm.
that he's directed that he's done a great job at. But again, his acting credits I just didn't feel were there. Again, he's a good actor. I just didn't feel like he had a ton that I was blown away by necessarily as far as acting credits go. And then the other guy is one of my favorite filmmakers. I'm wearing the Rocky shirt because I had to represent Sylvester Stallone. I mean, this guy, he's one of my
Yeah,
favorite just
yeah,
Hollywood figures. He's just an icon and a legend. His
yeah.
origin story of how he got into Hollywood is amazing.
Right.
Um, he, of course, acted in the first Rocky, ended up directing Rocky 2, 3, 4, and 6.
Wow.
So he's got some good directing credits, not just with the Rocky movies, but also with um, those other popular franchise, Rambo, which he directed the fourth installment of.
Oh,
And then he also did the first Expendables movie. He directed that too.
oh.
Um, but yeah, when it comes to this guy, I mean, the acting credits is what kind of outweighs the directing for me. So
Mm.
that's why I ended up not going with him because that's basically all that he's directed is those six movies. So, but other movies he's in, Tango and Cash, Demolition Man, the Guardians movies, Suicide Squad
Yeah.
he was in as well. So he's done a lot of great movies that I really enjoy, but more on the acting side than the directing side. So that's why he didn't quite make the cut.
Yeah, and I lied. I do have. I'll just throw out a couple names. I won't expound much, but
Yeah.
a couple outliers that almost made my list. Kenneth Branagh. I just haven't
Mm,
seen a lot of his movies that he's been in or directed, frankly.
okay.
And then who's another? Oh yeah, Ben Affleck is another one I really like, but
Mm,
he just didn't quite break my into my top 10.
great. Great picks. All right. Let's jump in. Why don't you kick us off, Bert, with your number 10?
At 10, I've got Clint Eastwood,
Oh,
legendary guy, still
yes,
directing, right? He's got a movie coming out this year at
he
93 years
does.
old.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Unreal. 72 actor credits, 46
Mm,
director credits.
wow.
He's won a Oscar, a couple Oscars, I think.
Hmm.
And I think he won Best Actor for Unforgiven.
Right.
He's obviously been in some legendary westerns. I'm not a huge fan of that genre, but even after that, he did some films that I've liked, some comedies and that kind of thing. And then I should say, like in the 80s and 90s, and then more recently, some really solid dramas that he's acted in and directed. Just a really well-rounded and lengthy career. I almost feel bad putting him at number 10. I wouldn't say though he's one that I've sought out a lot of his acting roles, but his
Mm,
his directorial efforts have been solid. They look very expertly done. And I mean, goodness, he's directed 46 features at this point, so it's just really kind of unreal.
it is absolutely amazing career, very long career. Great pick. I'm going to go with my number 10, which is the fellow behind you there. It is Mr. Ron Howard.
Mm,
And man, Ron Howard is such a great filmmaker. Um, Big fan of his work. He's 70 years old now. He's the son of two actors, Rance Howard and Gene Spiegel, which I found interesting. And
mm,
of course, he ended up acting at age 6 on the Andy Griffith Show. So he's been in the business literally his whole life. Spent his life on film sets and TV sets. So he's a real pro. Even his children do it now. Of course, Bryce Dallas Howard, a big time actress and director. She's
yeah,
directed a couple of episodes of The Mandalorian. He's we've dubbed him on the podcast the biopic king because he does a lot of
yeah,
those true stories. But he's also branched out, and that's what I like about his career. It's so interesting to look at because when you look at his directing filmography, um, he started with Splash, and then he did one of my favorites, which is Willow.
yeah.
Um, and he's kind of just gone all over the place. Ever since then, he's done some, historical epics. He's done obviously a lot of biopics, done some comedies. He's done one of our favorite Christmas films, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. So he's
Mm,
kind of gone all over the place and done so many
yeah,
different things that it was I had to include him. The only reason he's so low on the list is because his acting credits I didn't find quite as impressive. I'm a huge fan of American Graffiti, his kind of breakout
mm,
role, film role by George Lucas, and he showed up in other movies like The Shootist with John Wayne, and he's done a couple other things, but just because his acting credits weren't as exhaustive, I guess you could say, as his incredible directing career. That's why he ended up a little bit
yeah,
lower, but fantastic filmmaker. So yeah, he ended up at 10.
yeah. Nice.
All right, Bert, what do you have at number 9?
Robert Redford.
Oh, great.
And yeah, and he's won an Oscar. He's been nominated several times. He has 83 acting credits, only 10 as a director, but I feel like those director credits have been really good.
Mhm.
Um, Quiz Show, River Runs Through It, Lion for Lambs, Legend of Bagger Vance. I wouldn't say those are five-star films for me, but they're
Mhm.
all well directed and well
Yep.
made. I put them a little lower on my list or higher, however you want to look at it, just mainly because, yeah, not as many directorial efforts that just super impressed me, but I love him as
Mm.
an actor.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're watching him from 19, a film from 1965
right.
or, in a Captain America movie. I mean, he is
Yeah,
so good. He's one of those guys, the it factor. I feel like he's almost the definition of that because he
yeah.
transcends any decade or film. He picks really great films to act in, like
Hmm.
um Last Castle.
Yeah.
You got that one All Is Lost where it's just him the whole time.
Yes.
He's got one of those. Sneakers. Just and then a lot of the movies he's directed and he's starred in too.
Mm.
But yeah, Indecent Proposal. I mean, he's great as sort of this in this villainous role. So I just think he's incredible. Just not enough directed movies that were, really high in this number of stars. Otherwise, I'd have them higher.
Right, right, sure. No, I can see that for sure. Excellent choice. Gonna move on to my number nine, which is Mr. Ben Affleck. So you already mentioned him. He did
Okay,
make my list.
nice.
He's a 51-year-old filmmaker. His mother, I guess, was the one who really encouraged him and his brother Casey Affleck to make
Hmm.
movies at home, and first started acting professionally at age 7. So he's another one that's been in it
Oh,
for a long time. And of course, he wrote the film Good Will Hunting with his childhood friend Matt Damon, and the rest is history. I mean, after that, it was just, big role after big role, and all kinds of huge movies like Armageddon. And then, when he started directing, he did some really interesting work with Gone Baby Gone, and then one of my favorites, which is The Town. Huge fan of The Town. It's all set in Boston where he grew up, and it's an excellent film, very well directed. He stars in it as well, so he's acting in it as well. That's one thing that I'm sure we'll bring up a lot is, like you mentioned with Robert Redford, pulling double duty and acting and directing in the same movie. Has to be a challenge. But yeah, big fan of him as a filmmaker. He of course was nominated, I believe, for Best Director for Argo, which I think might have won or at least was nominated for Best Picture. Great film. This is probably my favorite film he's ever made. I really enjoy Argo a lot. Um, it's a really just tense kind of true story about the Iranian hostage crisis back in the 70s. Great movie. And then of course he starred in several movies that I'm a huge fan of. Like The Accountant, which is finally getting a sequel. They just announced recently. So yeah, so we're excited to see what that is. And then of course, the big controversy was when he was announced as Batman. Everyone kind of went crazy and was like, "What? What's going on? What is Zack Snyder thinking?" And then of course, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice was released and shut everybody up because he did an amazing job in that role. Played it to perfection throughout that film. And of course, Zack Snyder's Justice League as well, which I just dropped. There it is. Zack Snyder's Justice League. Great performance in that one too. As this character, he just really kind of took Batman to new places that we hadn't really seen before in other movies. So yeah, huge fan of Affleck and his work both on and off camera. All right, so that's my number nine. Bert, what do you have at number eight?
I have Mel Gibson at number
Mm,
8, and this is a guy that I've really enjoyed his acting credits, more so years ago, but even some recently. He won an Oscar for Braveheart. He won actually as Best Director and it won Best Picture, and then he got nominated for Best Director for Hacksaw Ridge.
yeah,
He's got 76 actor credits,
mm,
13 for director. The thing is, really, it's about more like 6 director credits because a lot of those aren't big features and that kind of thing. But
right.
but the ones he has directed, I mean, in addition to Braveheart, I mean, Passion of the Christ, Man Without a Face, which was a decent drama, and of
Mm,
course Hacksaw Ridge. So some really
yeah,
strong ones for the ones that he has directed. But goodness, the amount of enjoyment I've gotten from his action and comedy from so many movies.
yeah.
Maverick,
Mm.
Ransom, which I don't think you've seen yet. It's so
Oh
intense.
yeah, I need to see
He's
that
a
one.
really intense guy.
Yeah,
He's
for
one of those
sure.
kind of like Tom Cruise and a few others that can really bring the intensity. Like he can really
Hmm.
make you feel it. Like even in Lethal Weapons movies, which obviously have a lot of comedy too.
Yeah.
Um, The Patriot, What Women Want,
Mm.
Chicken Run, yeah, very diverse. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where I had to put him a little lower on the list, but someone I've enjoyed quite a lot over the years.
Yeah. Excellent choice. Excellent choice. All right, let's move on to my number eight. It's a guy by the name of Ben Stiller. I
Oh,
put it
okay.
number eight. I really like Ben Stiller. Uh, he's such a talented guy. Comes from, of course, an acting family, Jerry Stiller and Anne Maria is his mother's name. So he grew up on sets of TV series and movies that his parents were in, and started making Super 8 movies with his sister and his friends at a very young age. His rise was not as quick as you might think, coming from a family like that. I was reading about his kind of career startup. I guess he was
Oh,
making some short films and things. He ended up being hired on Saturday Night Live, but was fired after only 4 episodes, and then ended up getting his own TV show, The Ben Stiller Show on MTV, which only lasted 12 episodes. And so it's kind of like, it kind of had a bit of a rough start to his career, but
Yeah.
Heavyweights was kind of a breakout role that he did, a family comedy, which I remember watching when I
Okay.
was young. And then, of course, he directed a film, and then his real breakout film was The Cable Guy, even though it was kind of still more of a cult hit.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I mean, I was looking at his acting credits before Heavyweights. He had small roles in Happy Gilmore and
Yeah.
Empire of the Sun. And then he, acted in several movies. I'm a huge fan of Mystery Men, is one I really
Yeah.
like. Of course, Meet the
Yeah.
Parents and
Oh yeah.
Royal Tenenbaums, Anchorman. He has a cameo in, and he's been in so many family films that we like the Madagascar trilogy and the Night at the
Right.
Museum films, which we're huge fans of. So we've been entertained by Mr. Stiller many times. Recently, he was in a movie I really like called The Meyerowitz Stories, with Dustin Hoffman, more of a
Oh,
drama, that he
okay.
was excellent in. You can watch that on Netflix now. But yeah, the other films he directed after The Cable Guy, which is one of my favorites of his and favorite of Jim Carrey's career too. He did a movie called Zoolander, which of course is extremely popular.
I like that one.
Very funny movie. And then he directed Tropic Thunder, which is sort of the ultimate send up of Hollywood in recent years. It's a pretty bonkers movie.
Yeah.
But by far my favorite film of his, and really the reason he's on the list at all, is this film called The Secret Life of Walter Mitty,
Okay.
which I just find to be one of the most enjoyable movies ever. I really like this film. Very inspiring, very creative, offbeat kind of film. It's a movie I've showed people, and it's, I guess, one of those that you kind of either love or hate, because a lot of people I show it to go, "What did I just watch? I don't get it. What was that?" And other people are like, "That's the best movie ever." So, um, I'm obviously in the latter camp, but yeah, Mitty is a favorite of ours, and he directed and stars in that one, much like
Okay.
he did with both Zoolander and Tropic Thunder. So, yeah, if you haven't seen Mitty, I highly recommend it. It's a great film.
Yeah, I need to see that one yet because I need
Mm,
to talk highly of it. Yeah, if
yeah,
you would have asked me in 2005 who some of my favorite actors were at that time, I'd probably say he was one of them. I mean,
yeah,
I mean, Meet the Parents is still in my,
mm,
got to be my top 100 of all time films,
yeah,
and I really love Zoolander too, hilarious. But
right,
like the sequels to both of those were pretty awful, and
yeah,
he's had a lot of missteps with his
that's true.
comedy. So I've
Hmm.
kind of sort of, I don't know, I feel like he's a friend that I've lost touch with or something like that is kind of how I feel like with him. But
Right,
yeah, he's made me laugh quite a bit over the years.
yeah, absolutely. All right, let's jump into your number seven, Bert. Who's there?
Danny DeVito.
Oh, nice. Okay,
No,
yes.
no Oscars,
Right, sure.
but the resume speaks for
Hmm,
itself.
yeah.
Now his directorial efforts, there's not a lot of them, but the notable
Hmm.
ones are Throw Mama from the Train. I don't know if you've seen that one.
No.
Pretty funny. Twins,
Hmm.
War of the Roses, which is a really funny dark
Oh, yeah.
comedy, and then Matilda, which is kind of
Hmm.
his crowning achievement
Hmm.
directorially. And is a very funny film, and he's hilarious in it. I mean, that whole cast is great.
Yeah.
But this is a guy that just such a huge personality. You
Yeah.
know, he's not the tallest guy, but I mean, he makes up for his stature maybe with this personality, which
Yes.
I mean, he's one of these guys that he just gets this look in his eye, and it just starts to crack me up. I
Right.
don't know if you've ever seen the sort of irreverent show. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I've heard of it. I haven't watched it though. Yeah.
He's got, I mean, he's in dozens of episodes of that.
Yeah.
And then in these movies he's done, well, he's acted in a lot of the ones he's directed, of course,
Right.
but, and you know, he was really great. Even though I didn't love Batman Returns,
Mm.
he was really perfectly cast in it. Right.
Yep.
And, he's been in some good comedies like, Deck the Halls, which we usually watch at Christmas time.
Yep.
Um, and he actually goes back to television. He was in this show called Taxi.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I didn't watch a lot of that
Mm.
or any of it, I don't think. But
Mm.
so he's kind of done a little bit of everything. But again, just another guy that's super funny and has shown when he's decided to direct that he does a great job. Matilda, he directs that like he's directed 40 movies. I mean, the camera
Yeah.
angles, the inserts. I mean, it's just, brilliant. But I saw that you had watched that recently. I was really glad you
Yeah.
liked that as well.
Yeah, I saw that for the first time just this week. It was my brother's
Uh,
birthday this week, and it's one of his favorite movies he discovered
yeah.
just maybe a year ago or so. And he's been trying to
Uh-huh.
get me to watch it ever since. And so we were over there having cake, and he was like, we gotta put it on. Let's put it on. I was like, all right, do it. So yeah, I was treated to the delightful film that is Matilda. Yeah, it instantly became one of my favorites. Can't wait to show the whole family that one. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
what a great job directing. You're right. There's so much going on in that movie. The
Yeah.
effects and
Yeah. Yeah.
all the characters, and strikes that
Hmm.
perfect balance of like a grounded dramatic kind of story that you care about with kind of cartoony
Yes.
sensibility, fantasy elements and all that. It's excellent,
Yeah.
excellent, excellent movie. So yeah, I'm glad he made the list. I haven't seen War of the Roses, those other movies he's made, but
Okay.
I'm really
Yeah.
excited to check those out now. All right, I'm gonna move on to my number seven, which is a guy you've already brought up. It's Mr. Robert Redford.
Yeah.
Man, this guy is one of my favorites, going all the way back to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Unlike you, I'm a huge Western guy, so
Yeah.
this is a big
Yeah.
one for me that I really enjoy. Of course, an acting credit, not a directing credit. And then Jeremiah Johnson's another one I've seen many, many times. It's another one of my favorite movies.
Oh.
He does a great job as Jeremiah Johnson. 3 Days of the Condor, probably the best political thriller ever made back in the 70s. Him and Faye Dunaway are great in that. And then, like you mentioned, All Is Lost. It's just him the whole movie. It's fantastic, riveting performance there.
Yeah.
And then, like you mentioned, Captain America, and he shows up in Avengers Endgame as well, briefly in a cameo role. So
Yeah. I
he's
love
kind
that.
of done it all, as an actor. He's played all kinds of different roles. Great films. All the President's Men is another one I really like, where he's
Uh-huh.
playing a real life character. Spy Game with Brad Pitt. He did that Disney remake of Pete's Dragon too, which I think is fantastic. Highly recommend that if you haven't seen it. But then as a director, I've seen many of his films. Ordinary People was his debut, which is a really, really good drama. Did a
Hmm.
great job directing that. You mentioned A River Runs Through It, which is fantastic. Quiz Show is
Yeah, that was good.
probably my favorite of all of his directorial efforts. I think that's a really good
Mm.
movie. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, Legend of Bagger Vance and Lions for Lambs are both good as well. So, yeah, just through and through pro. Although he was born in California, he actually debuted acting on stage in New York City and ended up
Mm.
getting some TV roles. Nominated for another one of my favorites I didn't mention, The Sting.
Yeah.
Nominated for
Yeah.
Best Actor for that film. He actually won Best Director for Ordinary People, which was pretty incredible because that was his first film, and then was nominated for Best Director and for Best Picture for Quiz Show. So yeah, he's received many accolades over the years, well deserved. Long, long historic career, kind of a legendary figure in film. Even though he's still going, he's at 87 years old. So yeah, yeah, great, great, great guy, great filmmaker. Had to have him in the list. So,
Yeah.
Bert, why don't you go ahead and give us your number six?
That's where I've got Rob Reiner.
Oh, okay, great.
And yeah, I guess he goes back to 67 with being in TV
Yeah.
before my time. He was in this show All in the Family,
Oh,
which
okay.
was very popular in the 80s. I think it was the
Yeah,
80s. I didn't actually see it, but I'm aware of the show. It's one of those
sure.
things, you hear about. And he was in 184 episodes of that show.
Hmm.
And he's just a guy that has just turned up in these roles, in numerous roles here and there with small
Mhm.
parts. And he's
Yeah.
always kind of
Yes.
a fun or funny guy. Like I like to
Right.
see him play like a mass murderer or something, to break it up. But
Right.
really, so I wouldn't say he's one of my favorite actors, but I haven't seen
Mm.
anything bad, and he's
Right.
got a pretty good resume.
Hmm.
But on top of that, it's just the directorial efforts.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, when Harry Met Sally was just amazing. I saw that
Yeah.
in the theater and was just blown away. And same with Misery, and then A Few
Mm.
Good Men. I went
Mm.
back and watched that a year or so ago. I was blown away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's 4.5 star film for me. I always like
Mm.
The American President. And there's
Yes.
others, that you mentioned. So
Hmm.
just a real pretty tight resume as director. Some really good stuff there.
Yeah, absolutely. Great pick. All right, jumping into my number six, uh, actor and director I really like. Um, Wanted him to be a little higher, but he hasn't directed as many as I thought he had, I guess. So that's why I ended up a little bit lower. It is Mr. Kevin Costner,
Oh,
um, 69-year-old filmmaker. When he was younger, he was not academically inclined, but he really enjoyed piano and poetry and sports and singing in the First Baptist Choir. And he credits seeing the 1962 film How the West Was Won with making
hmm,
him want to become a filmmaker and with his
okay.
love for the Western genre. Untouchables was his first kind of big breakout role. He's in a film before that called Silverado, which I really like.
Oh yeah,
Um, but Untouchables was a big one.
it's a good one.
And then, of course, he directed and starred in Dances with Wolves, which
Hmm.
won him 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Absolutely incredible. That's yeah, definitely one of my favorite kind of epic westerns. Um, he's of course known for acting in many baseball films like Bull
Yeah,
Durham and Field of Dreams, For Love of the Game. He
Ten
did
Cup, right?
Tin Cup. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, that
He
was
Oh, that's a golf
golf
one.
though.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
right. Got my sports mixed up.
Sports, yes. Um, JFK. I'm a huge fan of JFK and
Yeah,
what he
that's
did in that
great. Hmm.
film. Great
Hmm.
performance. And then he starred as Wyatt Earp in the film of the same name, directed by Lawrence Kasdan. Came out the same year as Tombstone. I'm one of the few who prefers Wyatt Earp to Tombstone. We can maybe have that debate at another time on the
Twin film.
podcast. Um, he's known for being in one of the biggest flops of all time, Waterworld, which I like. It's Mad Max on the water, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So
this
it's got
didn't
some fun.
it didn't sink his career, which is pretty incredible considering how big of a flop it was. He continued to make some great movies. I think highly underrated film he stars and directs is The Postman. I really like The Postman, post-apocalyptic
Mm.
film. I think is really good. And then of course one of my favorite comic book films ever, Man of Steel. He's in that as well. So, I mean, so many great acting credits and directing credits. Another one he directed that I like was Open Range, which I think is a very underrated Western with him and Robert Duvall. Both are great in that. So, yeah, tons of movies I've enjoyed over the years. I've always liked him as an actor. Typically gives a pretty, straightforward kind of understated performance. I've always felt his performances are very grounded.
Yes. Yeah.
And I appreciate that about an actor that doesn't feel like they have to go over the top all the time, there's a place for that, but his performances tend to be a lot more grounded. So yeah, I like him a lot as both a director and an actor. So yeah, he had to make the list.
Yeah, I thought about him too.
Mm,
I'll mention just real briefly here. The brilliance of some of the brilliance of Man of Steel is that it's so grounded for being a Superman film,
yeah.
and it wasn't already grounded enough. Speaking of grounded, like you said,
Mhm.
Kevin Costner further,
Yes.
emphasizes that in the small roles that he
Mm,
has, so effective, and love him in
hmm.
that movie. Yeah.
Yep, totally agree. All right, Bert, we're on to your number five now. What do you have there?
This might be where people listening will say, well, this is where Bert's list kind of took a hard left turn and went down the wrong road.
Uh-oh.
No, at number five, I've got Harold Ramis.
Oh, see,
Uh,
you know what? I actually had him lower. Like I almost did an
uh-huh.
honorable mention with him because I
Oh, okay.
I I support this choice. Yeah.
The thing is, he doesn't have the biggest resume,
Yes.
but there's some really, really good stuff on there.
Hmm.
Now, acting wise, it was a bit controversial with myself because he's not an actor. He hasn't acted a whole lot. He's done quite a few little bit parts,
Right.
but he did act in full length, like starring roles in the
Yeah.
movies Stripes and Ghostbusters 1 and
Hmm.
2.
Yep.
But it really was mostly the 80s when he did most of his acting. I mean, he's had some
Sure.
cameos since then.
Right.
Um, but some of these movies he's directed, Caddyshack Vacation, Groundhog Day, Groundhog Day. Just, I mean,
Yeah,
every time I watch it, it gets better.
yeah,
It's like I'm
right.
watching it over and over, right? Uh,
Yes.
Multiplicity. And then he did 4 episodes
Mm.
of The Office, which were
Oh,
great.
okay.
And so, not the biggest resume, but that's how much I like what he's done. So I had
Yeah,
to include him in the top five, despite not having a giant resume. He does have 40 credits between actor and director to his
yeah,
name, though.
yeah. I think that's a worthy addition. Yeah, he's definitely extremely talented as both, especially in Ghostbusters. He's so perfectly cast in that part. I don't feel like anyone else could have played that role in
What?
those movies,
Yeah. I mean, all those guys are friends, and so that's
Yeah.
one of the brilliance. Some of the brilliance of that movie is
Yep.
that they tailor it for the person. A lot of times they'll
Yes.
bring, let's hire this actor. Can we get this actor? Oh, good, we got this actor. But
Right.
that part's not written because you
For
know the
them.
strengths of that
Yeah.
actor per
Hmm.
se.
Yep.
But in
Yep.
a movie like that, it is.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
And those directing credits, like you said, are phenomenal.
yeah.
Yeah, to be the director of the first Vacation and Groundhog Day. Yeah, which is like you, I watch it every year, so never gets old. Somehow never gets old.
I mean, it
Um,
kickstarted a whole genre, right?
yeah, yeah,
Of
the time loop film. Yeah,
yeah.
right. For sure. All right, now it's time to jump into my number five, which is a actor who became one of my favorite directors. His name is Jon Favreau. And
Get
so,
out. That is
yes,
my number four.
really? Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, we're on the same page there. So
Crazy.
excellent. All right, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, this guy, I was reading a little bit about him. He's 57 years old. He got his start in improv comedy, kind of
Mm,
where his whole career began. And he's just a very, enthusiastic guy, very imaginative, creative. He's, really interested in filmmaking technology and as well as storytelling. He's also a very talented writer. He writes a lot of the movies, co-writes a lot of the movies he
mm.
works on. He's written most of the episodes of The Mandalorian, which is my favorite
Oh, really?
TV series. Yeah, yeah, and he's directing the Mandalorian movie, which is set to come out next
Hmm.
year. Yeah, great career. Of course, on the acting side, his first kind of big role was D-Bob in Grudy, which is a favorite of
Hmm.
mine. Of course, he showed up in all kinds of kind of smaller. He's in Batman Forever. I don't know if people know, but he shows up as a security guard in Batman Forever.
Memorable.
Eclectic career. He's in Deep Impact, which I like a lot. He was in Daredevil with Ben Affleck, who we just talked about. And then his first directorial effort is a family classic, Christmas
Mm,
classic Elf. This movie is so
yeah.
good, so good. We've talked about this before. Such a great, tone that the movie has, and the use of stop motion and all these, elements to it that just make it stand out and make it unique. He also did a movie called Zathura,
Oh,
directed.
right. Hmm.
I'm a huge
Hmm.
fan of Zathura. It's kind of
Oh, yeah.
basically a semi remake of Jumanji. It's actually the second book in the Jumanji
Really? Oh,
franchise.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same author, and
Oh,
so he did a great job directing that. Really enjoy that film. And then he kicked off the MCU with Iron Man. I mean, the first Iron Man movie still to me is, like kind of the peak of comic book filmmaking. It's so great. Notoriously didn't have a finished script when they started shooting. And so there's a
wow.
lot of it that was improvised and things like that. So
Hmm.
he kind of works, quick on his feet. That improv background is there. Iron Man 2 he directed as well.
Yeah.
Um, and then he directed a movie I really like. I think it's underrated. We talked about it on our Defending Bad Movies podcast, Cowboys and Aliens. I get a kick out
Oh,
of
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Sci-fi
Yeah.
Western crossovers, tons of
Decent.
fun.
Yeah. Decent.
Yeah, I like that film. And then, of course, as an actor, he's shown up in, plenty of other films. Four Christmases is one that I like quite a bit.
Right.
Of
Hmm.
course, he plays Happy Hogan in Iron Man 3, as well as the first two Iron Man films. Shows up again as that character in all of the Spider-Man movies, the MCU
Right.
Spider-Man movies, which you can tell he's having a
It's funny.
blast playing that
Yeah.
part. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
very, very funny. He even shows up in John Carter, which is another underrated movie that I
Oh,
like a lot. Um, so yeah, he's had quite a good career. Um, one of Ron Howard's films he shows up in as well. although you wouldn't recognize him unless you knew his voice. It's Solo. He plays an alien in Solo, which
Really?
is pretty
Okay.
cool. Yeah. So he's even worked with the great Ron Howard. Um, but yeah, huge fan of him. As an actor, I think he's great. He's always, seems to be having fun in the roles he's playing, but it's really as a director where I think his talent really came through. Like I said, both as a visual storyteller, someone who deals a lot with, technology. His Jungle Book, of course, I didn't mention his Jungle Book film is pretty stunning. I mean, what he was able to achieve there, one human actor amongst
Yeah.
all digital characters is pretty amazing. So, yeah, obviously, again, very interested in technology, and that's I think why his career clearly led to Lucasfilm. They're kind of known for pushing the boundaries of technology and that kind of
Yes.
thing, and what he's done with The Mandalorian and the volume. Where they shoot that, it's all LED screens, and it's kind
Right.
of a revolutionary thing that he's been a part of over there. So yeah, big fan of Favreau. He's your number four. So why don't you tell us why you like this guy so much?
Yeah, he hits pretty high
Yeah.
because of the fact that these movies that he has crafted are, a lot of them are 4.5 stars or
Hmm.
higher for me. I
Yep.
mean, you mentioned them. Elf, I mean, yeah, a lot of it is the technical side of it. I mean,
Right.
what he does with forced perspective
Yeah.
is maybe second only to Lord of the Rings. I'm not even
Right.
kidding.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
really ingenious and fun too, just so much
Yes.
fun.
Yes.
And the ending of the movie is a little schmaltzy. I've said that before, but I still love that movie.
Yeah.
And then yeah, Jungle Book looks great.
Mm,
Yeah, Iron Man 1 and 2, I mean, they're probably 4.5 star films, too.
mhm.
And then you omitted this. I'm sure it wasn't on purpose because you love this film, but that's the live action Lion King.
Yes.
But
Yes.
the thing is, the animation looks top notch. I've got it in
Absolutely.
4K and 3D actually, but
Mm,
especially in 4K, I mean, it
hmm.
just is. I can't really point out any CG that looks better than that film. As far as like
Yeah, it's true.
photorealistic, right? I think
Yes.
that's as good as we've seen to date.
100%.
And I
Yes.
think it's a great film. I mean, obviously the original's really good too,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
that's it. It's one we keep going back to because it's just incredible. So yeah, just a very innovative kind of guy, and his movies have just hit so high on the number of stars that I give them. So well
Absolutely.
worth
Yeah.
worthy. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Lion King, it's like a nature documentary. I mean, it's really
Yeah,
it's
exactly. Yeah,
really stunning to watch. Yeah, I have to admit that. The prequel is coming out later this year,
you
Mufasa,
had
The
said
Lion
that.
King.
Now, and did
Yeah.
you remind me? Is that also going to be the photorealistic CG?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
the trailer's out now. I'll send it to you. It's pretty impressive. Pretty
And is
impressive.
it a new? It's a new story, is it?
It's about Simba's dad, basically how
Not
he
a remake
became
then,
the
or
Lion King.
something
Nope.
like that.
No, it's a
Okay,
prequel
okay,
technically.
nice.
So yeah, curious to see how that turns out.
Yeah.
All right, jumping into your number four. Oh, that was your number four. We need my number four now. So my
Yeah.
number four is a guy you have already mentioned. It is a guy by the name of Kenneth Branagh.
Mm,
Yeah, this guy I'm a huge fan of. Um, he's Shakespearean trained actor, right? From
yeah.
Ireland is where he was born. And I feel like a lot of, British actors who are um, especially with that kind of Shakespearean background can seem a little pretentious. I don't get that vibe from him though. I don't know if you've ever seen any interviews with him. He seems very grounded, very down to earth.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he's brilliant. Like you can tell by the way he talks that he's just, a brilliant guy. But I really enjoyed, of course, the first thing I ever saw him do was Thor, first Thor film from Marvel from back in Phase
Yeah.
One, which I think is just excellent. And it definitely has that
Yes. Yes.
Shakespearean bent to it, with Thor and Loki and their dad and the whole thing. It's really good. But yeah, he's a really great filmmaker. He's tackled so many different genres. I mean, everything from a comic book kind of fantasy thing to he's done stuff like Henry V. That was his breakout film that he directed and starred in. Um, he's done dramas. He's done Mary Shelley's Frankenstein adaptation, which was excellent as well. Many Shakespearean adaptations, As You Like It with Bryce Dallas Howard, which I think is
Mm.
great. Um, And then he's, now crafting this trilogy of Agatha Christie adaptations, Murder on the Orient Express.
Oh,
He just did Death on the Nile, and then Haunting in Venice, um, which I like all those movies as well. But then he's done stuff like, of course, he's acted in stuff like Harry Potter. Plays
oh,
a great character in the second Harry Potter film. Um, he's acted in Valkyrie, which is a movie I really like, World War II film. Um, a couple of Chris Nolan films, including Dunkirk and Tenet. Tenet, he
hmm,
plays the villain, which is I've never really seen him play a villain,
I forgot that.
other than Tenet and another film that he also directed, which co-stars Kevin Costner, Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit,
Oh, okay, sure.
which I liked a lot. Played the bad guy in that and directed the film. So yeah, he's pulling double duty a lot of times. He directed another, speaking of our, live action Disney adaptations, one of my favorites is Cinderella. I thought he did a
Mm,
fantastic job with this
really?
movie. Really well done. Production design and everything is fantastic in this. All the performances are great. So yeah, again, just such a varied career. Again, so many
Hmm.
different genres and things that he's tackled that he's always just done a top-notch job with. Um, Forgot to mention he was also in Oppenheimer too, recently. So
Okay.
yeah, his first small part, acting wise, was in one of my favorites, Chariots of Fire.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's kind of where he got his start, over in the UK. So yeah, he's born in Belfast, Ireland. He made a movie called Belfast just a couple years ago, which was fantastic. And it's basically an
Hmm.
autobiographical film about his life and where he grew
Oh,
up and that thing. So highly recommend that if you're a fan of Branagh's. Belfast is excellent. So yep, that's my number four.
he's a chameleonic actor. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I to this day, if you held up a picture and said, "Who is this person?" I probably wouldn't
Right.
know it's him. I
Yeah.
I feel like it's
Right.
like he and Daniel Day-Lewis, those two
Mm,
guys, they
hmm.
disappear so much that I feel like I never even really know what they really look like. Does
Right.
that make
It's
sense?
true. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I can know what you mean. Yeah, he definitely changes his look a lot, especially as Hercule Poirot, the detective. He's got that huge mustache in the Murder on the Orient Express films.
Oh,
It's quite something. But yeah, yeah, he's definitely a great actor and a great filmmaker too. So all right, Bert, we're on to your number three. What do you have there?
John Krasinski at number three.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
And quite a bit of influence because of the acting credits,
Sure.
because he doesn't have the biggest resume. He's
Mhm.
only directed three films,
Right.
four. Is he directing the new Quiet Place film, the prequel?
He's not actually. He handed the reins to
Hmm.
someone else. I think he's planning on directing part three whenever they get around to that. But no,
And did
he's
he direct If?
yep, he did.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yep.
The one that just came out.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so not a lot of directorial credits, but what he did direct are, is two really great Quiet Place
Mm,
films,
yeah.
which I feel like they could have been terrible, and instead they were. You can tell there was a lot of careful planning, a lot of creativity that goes into those, and for a first-time director, he just did great. Actually,
Yeah.
he also directed a film called The Hollers, which was a drama
Mm,
a few years back,
okay.
and that was it was an okay drama. I mean, the
Mm,
direction was fine,
hmm.
and he also directed three episodes of The Office, which of
Oh.
course starred in, and I'm a huge fan of. And to watch where he came from at the beginning of that show
Mm,
to, doing things like Jack Ryan,
mm.
wow, such an extreme, you know, chasm in between, I guess you could say.
Right.
But I love his acting in A Quiet Place, and he's
Mm,
great as Jack Ryan, and
mm,
obviously in The Office. So this isn't one where, again, it's not a huge resume.
mm.
He does have 56, separate acting credits. I mean, The
Right.
Office isn't 50 of those or anything like that.
Right.
So he has done quite a few parts
Yeah.
over the years, but he's just a guy that I like that much that that's
Yeah.
why I pushed him so high. And on top of that, his accomplishment with the Quiet Place series.
Yeah, absolutely. The Quiet Place films are really incredible because of all the world building that goes into those. I mean, he's
Yeah,
got like, I don't
yeah.
know if you've heard him talk about it, but he's got that whole world built out in his head. Like
Oh yeah.
he knows how it all started, he knows where it's going. Like it's pretty impressive to hear him talk about it.
Now, why did he start so far into it, well after the attack, I wonder, as opposed to,
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm
kind of
not
like
sure if
the Will Smith one, where it's already, the attack already took place and,
right.
we're well into it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's ever explained why. It may be
Yeah,
just because
that's
that
the
was the
story.
story he wanted to
Yeah,
tell, and
yeah,
that way it gives you room to do prequels and sequels and all the rest.
yeah.
So, yeah, I don't
I
know.
like
I
it
don't know.
though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. It's great. Definitely. Good
Yeah.
pick. All right, moving on to my number three. It is an actor and director, which got his career start on a very popular TV series called ER. It is Mr. George Clooney. George Clooney, I'm a really big fan of as an actor and director. Uh, he's, I guess you could say, Hollywood royalty. His aunt, Rosemary Clooney, was in a very popular film, White Christmas, another one we
Oh
watch
yeah.
every year. And so he's, kind of always been in the Hollywood film industry. Um, acting credits wise, I'm a huge fan of From Dusk Till Dawn, which is, one of his first big movies coming off of ER. Really, really like that movie by Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah, that movie's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And then, of course, he notoriously was cast as Batman in Batman and Robin, which is the most
Yeah.
derided of all the Batman films. Went heavy into the campier side of the character.
Not his fault
Um,
though.
Not his fault. It's all the writing. He actually, I don't think he's a bad Batman or a Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
very natural as Bruce Wayne. He kind of like is the perfect
Sure.
Bruce Wayne. But
Right.
coming off of that, he did several other films I liked in the 90s. The Peacemaker with
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman, Out of Sight with Jennifer Lopez. And then into the early 2000s, we have Three Kings, which I think is excellent. The Perfect Storm, and one of my favorites of all time from the Coen brothers, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Mm.
Which got to really, you get to see a different side of Clooney here. Very comedic role.
Mm.
It's a very kind of silly movie, but it's a great performance. It really is a really good performance, and it's yeah one of my favorites that he's ever done. And then of course he became very popular when he did the Oceans trilogy. Those heist
Yeah.
films with Steven Soderbergh directing. Excellent stuff there. He has a cameo in the Spy Kids movies, which
Oh.
I'm a big fan of. And then he's done several other films. A lot of people don't know about this kind of, this is an independent film. That's why a lot of people haven't heard of it. It's called The American. I think it was all shot in Italy.
Mm.
Um, it's a really cool kind of like assassin thriller type film, more of a dramatic than an action film. But he's really great in this. Really, really underrated performance he gives in that film. And then, of course, as director, he's done several great movies. I'm a huge fan of Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, in which he directed
Oh.
Sam Rockwell, based on a
Yeah.
true
Yeah.
story. Great movie. That was his first film. And then he did a really cool black and white movie called Good Night and Good Luck, which I really like as well. Again, kind of a biopic, biodrama.
Okay.
He did a comedy that I'm not crazy about. I think actually John Krasinski is in this. It's called Leatherheads. I don't know
Oh.
if you've seen that. It's like
No,
a
I haven't seen
football
that one.
movie.
Oh,
It's
okay.
football, but it's like way back in the early days when they had the leather helmets.
Oh,
So it's called Leatherheads. It's
huh.
it's kind of silly. I don't know. I wasn't super into it. I kind of like to watch it again though. One of my favorites of his is The Monuments Men, another
Hmm.
true story set during World War II. Huge cast.
Okay.
He got, I'm guessing all of his good Hollywood buddies like Matt Damon, John Goodman, Bill Murray, all in this. And it's a really, really good World War II flick. Um, and then more recently, he did a Netflix film called The Midnight Sky. Really enjoyed that more than I thought I
Hmm.
would. Really good performance, great direction. And then he directed Ben Affleck in The Tinder Bar, which is another one that's well worth seeking out. I think that one's on Amazon
Hmm.
Prime.
Okay.
And then most recently, he did The Boys in the Boat, which was one of my favorite films of
Oh,
last year.
okay. Yeah.
True story about the Olympic team back in the 1930s. in the Berlin Olympics while the craziness with Hitler and all that was going on. It's a really great,
Wow.
inspiring, true story. Highly recommend. So as a director, I mean, those, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 credits are all top notch, maybe with the exception of Leatherheads. All great films
Okay.
that I've really enjoyed. And
Yeah.
then acting wise, I just don't know if it gets any better. Two of my favorites, Gravity, he's great in that with Sandra Bullock, even though it's kind of more of a smaller role. And then I think this is easily his most underrated film. It's a Disney movie called Tomorrowland, directed by Brad Bird, who did The Iron Giant and The Incredibles. Um, I really, really enjoy this movie. So, yeah, Mr. Clooney, he was definitely always going to be near the top, and he made it to the number 3 spot. So that's where he's at.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of those. I like him
Mm,
as an actor.
hmm
He was good in Gravity too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Bert, we're on to your number 2. What do you have there?
At two, I have Jordan Peele.
Oh, yes.
And what's so crazy about this is that, as people probably know, started out as a comedian. He was on the show
Hmm.
Workaholics. I think I've seen a few episodes of it now. And but most notably is this I don't even know if it's a show. I've only ever seen it on like with YouTube clips, but it's Key and Peele.
Yeah.
Both these guys are as talented as any sketch comedy I've ever seen. Jordan Peele, the amount of characters I've seen him in numerous clips play
Yeah.
to precision just
Right.
are just so incredible and so funny most of the time
Right.
that I mean, he's just such a gifted actor and and just fully commits.
Mm.
He's almost too good for a show like Saturday Night Live or something like that, honestly.
Right.
Like you know, and some of these sketches are just absolutely bonkers and hilarious. Anyway, so then you've got this complete comedy um background, and then he
Right.
goes and makes three terrific horror movies.
Yeah.
It's just so bizarre.
Yeah.
And you know, of course, he's not. I don't think he ever appears in the films,
Mm-mm.
but you would almost think that he might lean the direction of horror comedy, right? Because that would be
Right.
a
Sure.
perfect fit.
Right.
But there is no sign of horror comedy
No.
in those movies.
Right.
Us, I mean, it's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen.
Hmm.
Um, just the whole tone of it, you know, is
Yeah.
just really scary and brilliant, layered. We've talked about Us before, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and the same goes for Get Out and Nope.
Hmm.
I wanted to rewatch it, didn't get a chance, but I've got that in 4K. But
Mm.
just I guess again, looking at like star rating, I don't know of a director that started out with three films that were that high. So he's three for three, but not
Yeah.
just three okay films,
Right.
three that are just mind blowing. This guy is a visionary,
Yeah.
genius guy, and he's
Yep.
not even leaning into what I've seen him perform, you know, time and time again with the comedy.
Right.
It doesn't even really make sense that it could be
Yeah.
so good, but it is.
Hmm. Yeah. Incredible. Incredible filmmaker. Um, I just haven't seen him act in a ton of stuff. I think that's why I maybe didn't include him.
He actually
But
has 54 acting
does he
credits. So
really?
I
Wow.
didn't really mention that he has been in a lot of stuff,
Right.
but never anything that's been like a starring, you
Huge.
know,
Yeah.
breakout starring role. I mean,
Sure.
even his buddy Key,
Yeah.
uh Michael Keegan Key, I think is his
Keegan
name.
Michael Key. Yeah.
Keegan Michael Key. Yeah. He's had a lot more bigger roles. I think even
Yes.
then, both these guys, I still feel like they're probably not a household name, but they really should be.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I think they're gaining
Yeah.
prominence. I think
Yeah.
Get Out did a lot. I mean, Get Out was a pretty
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah.
And then yeah, he's just continued to make great film after great film. He just announced his fourth
Oh,
film. What's the title? I want to say it's called like Him or something like that. I
oh,
want to say I think I read the plot had to do something with football, but I can't remember exactly. But yeah, that was just announced. So hopefully he gets that out soon because yeah, I'm itching to see the next great Jordan Peele film.
yeah. Can he make a fourth really great
Yeah,
one?
I
I
know,
mean, it's
right?
incredible. What
It
a run.
is. It's a great run.
Yeah.
Um, Excellent choice. All right, we're gonna move on to my number 2, which is brilliant performer, such a creative storyteller. He knows comedy and drama. He's very imaginative, uh, a childlike kind of sense of wonder. His parents were both puppeteers, which makes a lot of sense because it's Frank Oz. Frank
Oh,
Oz is who I picked for my number two. He's 79 years old. He's of course known as Yoda in Star Wars, first appearance in uh The Empire Strikes Back. And then of course before that he, knew Jim Henson and was involved with the Muppets. He played Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, Animal, and Sam the Eagle on the Muppet Show, as well as the many of the Muppet films. So yeah, he was in the Muppet movie. He has a cameo role in the Blues Brothers. He's in American Werewolf in London as well. He shows up there briefly. He has a lot of
hmm.
kind of smaller roles when it comes to his acting, and unless it's the Muppet stuff, which is the
Yeah.
bigger roles. Um, he co-directed with Jim Henson The Dark Crystal, which is one of my favorite
Oh, he did.
80s fantasy films.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was the first thing he ever directed. And then he took over I think it was the third Muppets movie, Muppets Take Manhattan, which
Oh,
is one of my favorites. Really enjoy that one. He directed Little Shop of Horrors,
okay.
which is the remake, the one from the 80s with Rick Moranis. It's just fantastic. I really enjoy that movie a lot. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which we've talked about on
Oh,
the podcast
yeah. I
before,
love that one.
which is
Yeah.
hilarious. Uh, and then he did one of my favorite Bill Murray performances, What About Bob,
Mm.
which I really enjoy with him and Richard Dreyfuss. Um, Another film I greatly enjoy, I grew up watching, is called The Indian in the Cupboard, which this
Oh,
one is
yeah.
really interesting. As far as the effects go, it's really incredible.
Horse
With a
perspective a lot in that one too,
lot of
right?
that there. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. You write that one
So
down.
yeah, that's a good one that is definitely worth checking out. So he's another guy that's kind of been on the forefront of technology, kind of pushing it forward, specifically in regards to puppetry, but also with other things. I mean, Dark Crystal was, of course, the first film that was exclusively puppets, no human actors. He's a big role in Labyrinth, which of course
Right.
had
Which
human
I love.
characters in it. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great movie. Uh, Henson directed that. But yeah, what he did with Dark Crystal is kind of just taking it a step further. Um, of course, he came back as Yoda in the Star Wars prequels, and then he's shown up and as far as acting goes in Knives Out, he has a brief role in
Really?
that. Yeah, he's in it for just like a minute. He's the guy that reads the will. Um,
Really?
yeah, and then he has a small voice cameo in Monsters Inc. and
Mm.
in Inside Out. So he's done those kind of smaller roles as well. Zathura, he's also in Zathura, which we've talked about earlier with
Okay.
Jon Favreau. And then going back to his directing credits, Bowfinger, I actually think is a pretty funny
I like that one. Yeah.
comedy with
It's
Steve
funny.
Martin. I like
Yeah.
that movie a lot. And then he went and did a heist film called The Score, which I
Oh,
like quite
yeah.
a bit with Ed Norton and Robert De Niro.
Hmm.
And then he did a remake of a older kind of sci-fi flick called The Stepford Wives with Nicole
Oh,
Kidman.
yeah.
So he's got
Hmm.
another one with just a varied career, it's kind of comedy kind of runs throughout, but the score definitely has a more dramatic bent to it. What about Bob even, for all its funniness, has definitely some drama in it. So he really balances those things well. And again, as a performer, I mean, his 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 voice work mixed with the puppetry. I mean, to me, it's second to none. To me, I still don't know if we've topped Yoda in Empire Strikes Back. It's such a just it feels so real, that
Yeah.
character. It doesn't at all feel like a puppet. It feels like an actor performing. And so he's just one that's always stuck out in my mind, and I've gotten great enjoyment out of so many of his films over the years that he had to make the cut. So he ended up at number two.
Yeah. That's a great pick. I didn't
Mhm.
think about him, and it's mainly because number one, I didn't know that he was seen in movies. I thought he only
Mm,
did puppetry, and I didn't think about the fact that though he is still acting when he does that, plus the voice
sure.
work. So that
Yeah.
great pick. I mean, he probably would have been right up there in my top two myself, you know.
Okay. Yeah,
Great one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Kind of outside the box pick. Yeah, because like
Yes.
you said, you don't
Yeah.
think of him, but yeah, when I came across him, I was like, oh yeah, of course, he's got to be on
It
there. So,
fits.
all
Hmm.
right, this is it, Bert. We're on to our number one favorite actor turned director. Who do you got?
And that's where I got this fella sitting right next to me here in various forms. Ron Howard, who you
Yes.
mentioned earlier.
Yep.
89 actor credits, 50 directorial credits.
Wow.
Um, Boy, he's got Oscar wins and nominations, various
Mm-hmm.
ones. And I just here's the thing. When I made this list, it was like there was everyone else, for me at least, there was
Sure.
everyone else, and then Ron Howard's sort of up on a pedestal as far
Sure.
as just the quality of stuff and
Mm.
volume of stuff that he's
Hmm.
put out. And you, I don't think you'd seen a lot of his early acting, but
Yeah.
I grew up watching reruns of the Andy Griffith Show where he was
Yeah.
Opie,
Right.
and same with Happy Days, reruns of
Sure.
him as Richie Cunningham, and so
Hmm. Hmm.
it would kind of seem that he mostly didn't want to be in starring roles because he got into a few films, but that diminished obviously
Mm.
over time. Although he still has kept his hand in it and has done many, many things. I mean, he's got 89 credits
Right.
separately throughout the years, but he clearly enjoys directing. We did a best director podcast. I think I
Mm.
might have put him at the top of that as well.
Think so.
I mean, so many that are just all really good, if not absolutely fantastic films. I'll just name a few that I've enjoyed over the years. Splash, Cocoon, Willow, Backdraft, Apollo 13, brilliant.
Mm.
Ransom, Ed TV, A
Mhm.
Beautiful Mind, Cinderella
Mm.
Man, Rush, In the Heart of the Sea. I just recently started watching Solo, by the way. I'm halfway
Oh,
through. It's really, really
okay.
good.
Cool.
Hillbill Elegy, 13 Lives. I mean, there's more, but that's just a
Yeah.
few of the ones that are just tremendous.
Yep.
And I just feel like he's got the key for for knowing how to direct pretty much as good or better than anybody, but especially for a guy that started out as an actor and was really good at it too.
Hmm.
I don't know that he had to show a lot of range per se compared to some
Mm.
actors,
Hmm.
but definitely with 89 credits, quite a expansive career at acting, and then just what he's created with his you know night job or whatever you want to call his other job of
Yeah.
directing. Just it's pretty much unmatchable.
Yeah. Excellent choice. Yeah. A great, great director, no doubt about it. One of the best. Yeah, and definitely had a long acting career for that. And so yeah, I like I said, he made my list just lower. Which is
Gotcha.
funny because my number one pick is one that was lower on your list, is Mr. Clint Eastwood.
Ah,
Um,
okay,
Clint Eastwood
makes sense.
made my number one. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's like you mentioned, 93 years old and still going, man.
awesome.
Yeah, he just directed a film, which I don't think he's officially said, but most suspect will be his final film, called Juror
Yeah,
Number Two. It's going to be a courtroom drama. But
good. Okay.
yeah, he started on TV, much like Mr. Ron Howard did,
Mm,
in the late 50s, early 60s on a show called Rawhide, and
heard of it.
very quickly got into film uh, via Sergio Leone in Italy, making these spaghetti westerns. The Man with No Name trilogy, Fistful of Dollars for a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly kind of
Hmm.
launched his career and kind of was like a sort of a resurgence of the Western genre in many ways, which kind of had its heyday in the 50s. And these kind of changed the game, a little more violent, a little more morally gray, you could say, kind of an
Mm.
anti-hero type character that Eastwood just played to perfection. Um, he did other westerns I like, Hang 'em High. I've got so many here. I'll just kind of blow through these quickly. Joe Kidd, Two Mules for Sister Sarah, uh, and then he directed um, High Plains Drifter, and this was sort of the big one. I think he had directed one other film before this, but this was the big western he directed that kind of solidified him as sort of an up and coming western director. Um, he uh, He also directed a film called The Eiger Sanction, World War II movie, which
Mm.
is definitely worth seeking out. Where Eagles Dare, it's another cool World War II kind of spy film, and He did also acted in Escape from Alcatraz, which is one that I really enjoy.
Oh,
Um, that I would recommend checking out. But then getting back into his westerns, he did one of my favorites of all time, The Outlaw Josie Wales. Again, he's pulling double duty on most of these, acting and directing, which to
hmm.
me has that extra challenge to it that's just got to be kind of odd on set. It's like directing yourself and directing the other actors and playing a scene with them and all of it. So pretty crazy. And then all the way into the 80s, he did westerns. He did Pale Rider in the 1980s. 85 is when this one came out. It's a really good one. Um,
Hmm.
he did one I've only seen recently, kind of a buddy cop film called The Rookie.
Yeah, I liked that
Liked
one a
quite a
lot.
bit. Him and Charlie Sheen in there.
I saw that one at least twice in the theater. That
Did
was
you? Yeah,
yeah, a good one. Yeah.
it's pretty wild. I really liked
Yeah.
it. So he did a good job, again, directing and starring in that. And then sort of his magnum opus, what I consider his greatest film, winner of 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director. It's Unforgiven.
Mm.
It's one of my favorite films of all time. Sort of the ultimate Western, kind of his last Western, really. It was kind of, he said everything he wanted to say about the genre in this movie, and his kind of
Okay.
whole career in this. So really, really good movie. Gene Hackman, I think, was also, yeah, he won Best Supporting Actor for this.
Mm.
Morgan Freeman's in it, Richard Harris, great cast,
Wow.
very, very well made film. Definitely worth checking out. And then he went on to continue and kind of branched off, kind of left the Western behind and did movies like Bridges of Madison County with Meryl Streep, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. One that I've had on the background here, but I really enjoy, Space Cowboys, which I think is tons of fun. Uh, so like again, he's another one of these guys that doesn't just do one thing. He kind of
Yeah.
he's branched out now, and Space Cowboys has so many great kind of comedic moments in it. A lot of these movies are much more dramatic or more action driven. Um, he did Flags of Our Fathers, which I think is a really underrated World War II film.
Mm.
He did Mystic River, which is another
Yeah, that
good,
was good.
really intense drama.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite of his more recent films is Gran Torino.
Mm. Yeah, good one.
Both direction and the performance he gives in that is absolutely wonderful. So I'd highly recommend that. And then he's kind of gotten into a lot of biopics, like American Sniper, and
Yeah,
he
that was
did
good.
Invictus, and he did J. Edgar and Jersey Boys and Sully with Tom Hanks.
Sully was good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sully. Every time I think about Sully, I think about this story Tom Hanks told with how Clint Eastwood directs. Most directors are big and bombastic and like, high energy, and they're like, okay, ready, camera, action, go. And Clint Eastwood kind of just sits there by the camera and he goes, all right, go ahead. you know, he's kind of the
Brilliant.
opposite.
That's great.
So yeah, great. Cry Macho was another one he did recently that I thought was good. It's on Max. If you have Max, you can check it out there. But yeah, Mr. Eastwood, he's my favorite. He's number one.
Nice.
All right, folks. Well, that's it for this episode of the Real World Podcast. Bert, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And make sure you leave a list below with your favorite actors turned directors. Make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified of all our videos. And we'll see you next time right here on The Real World.